Greetings, friends of the accordion. This will be kind of a speed version of how I developed my thing called the scale phrase. Okay, kind of a speed version. I looked at the ancient Greek tetrachord. Okay, I talked about that previously. And I kind of didn't need the bottom one. All right, kind of kept the top two, diatonic and chromatic. All right. And that was the ancient Greek tetrachord. And we talked about that in previous videos, but I want to show you that I like the idea of the diatonic tetrachord. The tetrachord basically being identified or classified by the half steps that are created, right? Same with the chromatic. So I kind of kept the two ancient Greek tetrachords called diatonic and chromatic. Then I went to the Middle Ages and I saw that they liked to classify and employ their tetrachords in an ascending order of pitch. Okay, they like to look at them that way and work with them. And they kind of favored the diatonic scheme of intervals. They kind of favored the diatonic and kind of shied away from the chromatic. All right, I talked about that in my previous two videos. So that was the past and how I brought myself up to the present. So here in the present day, I took the tetrachord and I processed it and I turned it into the scale phrase. The scale phrase is similar to the tetrachord, but there are some differences. First of all, obviously, there's a new name, a fresh new name, and we still have the 4 successive tones, and we like the Middle Age concept of the ascending order of pitch, all right, for our demonstrations. And then here you have the intervals that are preferred, all right, when you create and use your scale phrase, are the diatonic and chromatic scheme of intervals, which I just showed, all right, and then you have what's permissible. Well, in the tetrachord was 5 half steps from first tone to last tone. 5 half steps or an interval of a perfect fourth. But in my system, 4 to 6 half steps are allowed in that scale phrase. 4 to 6 half steps. Right? And also, because of this extension of the scale phrase, multiple new half, whole, and or 3 half-step combinations of intervals are generated. Now let me show you that 4 to 6 half-step thing. It won't take long today. In the tetrachord, the old tetrachord from the ancient Greeks, from first to last tone, in other words, in descending order of pitch, you had an interval of a perfect fourth. From here to here, and that was 5 half steps. You can see this. That's 1 half step, and each whole step is 2 half steps. So you have 1, 2, and 2. You have 5. In the scale phrase, you can have 4 to 6 half steps in that scale phrase. Now, in this example, all right, the new scale phrase, you see the ascending order of pitch, and you see the intervals here between tones. Whole, whole, whole. And what you have is 6 half steps. That's allowed. And that's a beautiful thing. It allows for so much more good stuff. And that interval is not a perfect fourth. This interval now is an augmented fourth interval, and that is allowed. So you see the 6 half-step example of the scale phrase. Now over here, you can see the scale phrase, and this is the 5 half-step example. From C to F, you have whole step, half step, and that interval for that scale phrase is a perfect fourth. And that is very, very similar, almost the same as your old ancient Greek tetrachord, one of the very first original ones. All right? Then also in the scale phrase system, you're allowed to have a smaller scale phrase. And here's an example. From C to F flat, you have your half step, whole step, half step, and that's only 4 half steps. And that interval, from first tone to last, would be a diminished fourth. And as a matter of fact, I call this the diminished scale phrase. I call this the major scale phrase. We'll get into that a little bit later. And this one here, naturally, I call this the augmented scale phrase. So over time, you'll get to see how this all kind of lines up and kind of logically makes sense. So you see the old tetrachord, 5 half steps. But my system says you can use 6 half steps. You can have a scale phrase with 5 half steps or 4 half steps. Okay, one quick thing here. In the scale phrase, the order of intervals between the 4 successive tones is that which determines the type of scale phrase. Okay? The order of the intervals. Now let's look at that major scale phrase that I just showed, all right? That's the major. You see the ascending order of pitch, and you see the ascending order of half-step intervals. That's whole step, half step. It's a major scale phrase. Now, even if you had your tones going down in pitch on a piece of notation paper, your music notes are written out, even if they go down, this is still a major scale phrase. It's the order, all right, of intervals between the tones in your ascending version of the scale phrase that determines the type or the name. The name we use to identify that scale phrase. So you see that there? Let me pull that back a little bit. It's the ascending order of intervals which determines the type. That's how you get your name. Even if those notes are written backwards, in your mind you're going to know it's still a major scale phrase, and that's just one example. All right? And then finally, I review one more time the basic scale phrase, the 8 basic scale phrases. Let's look at this if we can get that in there. Major, which I just showed. Minor. Minor 2. That's just a minor variation. The augmented, which I showed the augmented, and I just showed the diminished. And here's the harmonic. And as I said before, the harmonic we get because we liked the tetrachord scheme from the ancient Greek chromatic tetrachord. We liked the intervals that are used, so we're using them. We kept those. And you have your altered, and then you find you have your goofy blues scale phrase. That's really strange. We'll talk about that more later. And that's it. I went as quickly as I could. So in the next video, we're going to do scale formation. We're going to put 2 scale phrases together and see how it works. I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for being incredibly patient, and I hope to see you soon.